What cost do you put on poor land use where you're getting, like in Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, and we've had it here in the Bay of Plenty, where you've got the wrong land use in the wrong place and you get floods and landslides? Like, no one puts an economic value on the wrong land use in the wrong place, do they?
This podcast is brought to you by GroundShift. If you're anything like me, you've probably realised that doing things the way they've always been done doesn't always lead to better outcomes on farm. And that's where GroundShift comes in. GroundShift is all about helping farmers rethink the way that they approach their soils, the inputs into their system, and improving their overall farm system performance. We focus on building resilience, improving efficiency, and ultimately creating more profitable farm systems. It's not always about throwing more into your system. Sometimes it's about understanding what's driving those results beneath the surface. So if you're serious about improving your farm's profitability and resilience, and utilising biology to drive your farm system performance, I highly recommend checking out groundshift.ag, and you can follow them online at groundshift.ag on Instagram. Welcome to another episode of From the Soil Up podcast. Today's special guest is Dr. Alison Dewes. She is from Tipu Whenua, and she is a vet, ecologist, farmer, and one of the co-founders of Tipu Whenua, which is, I've been watching for a long time and watching her work. I've been really excited to get her on because she's actually been one of those guests that I think has got a huge amount of value and experience in New Zealand, but also Australia as well. So welcome on today, Alison.
Thanks, Conan. It's great to be here, and looking forward to having a good discussion.
Yeah, me too. So Alison, what do farmers need to know about building resilient farm systems?
Oh, we're diving right into that, and it's a good year to be discussing that, isn't it? With the Super El Nino coming up. But resilient farm systems, in my experience, are the ones that can flex and move with the times, so that they're not overstressed, they haven't got too much pressure, and they're not locked into a certain way of farming so much that they can't move as they need to respond to commodity price changes, weather events, etc. So what do farmers need to do to develop resilient farm systems? Number one, know your numbers. Know how you're performing economically, historically, like what's your return on assets, what's your operating profit, etc. Know your numbers around your animal performance. Like, is there a lot of involuntary culling going on? If there is, why is that happening? Are you losing too many at calving in that transition period? Is the empty rate too high after 10 or 12 weeks, etc.? Try and reduce those animal losses. That's a real biggie that we haven't really solved yet. And then also knowing that you're doing the right activity on the land enterprise that you've got. So in a lot of cases, what I've found up here is that, through that, when I say up here, Waikato Bay of Plenty, through the, we call it the noughties, when there was all that intensification going on of a lot of hill country and LUC 6 and etc. Dairy farms became very big. Cows had to walk a long way. Lots of hilly, tracks, etc. When we stand back and look at these, we were actually costing ourselves a lot of money just trying to extend our operations into land areas that we probably shouldn't have. And now it's like, stand back, look at that. Have we got the right land use in the right place? Do we need to constrain the dairy area and be kinder to our animals and have a far more efficient system on the best land? So there's quite a few things to think through, but you've got to go through sort of almost line by line. How am I performing in a profitable manner? Is my land use appropriate for my land asset? Are my animals best suited to this enterprise and the way I'm running it? Are my people happy? Is it easy to get labour? Do I have good staff retention? And have I retired the most vulnerable areas that are often the leakiest parts on the farm as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of good points there. And like you say, we will hear probably the word resilience a lot more over the next few months with this super death El Nino that keeps getting bandied around. So for you, resilience isn't just about, producing less. It's more about understanding where you currently are and having flexibility in your circumstances.
That's right, and not being too pressured. I generally find that when we start looking at farm systems, Conan, and we analyse all those different areas that I talked about, if we start taking pressure off, people and animals and the land starts performing better. People have more time and energy for strategy, and that's really important. So then they develop a clear vision of where they want to go. And that vision might be 5 years away, but through that process, we can set KPIs. And I know you're a big one for KPIs as well. What KPIs are we going to measure for profitability, for reducing risk, for animal performance, I don't want to see more than 1% of my animals die through that transition period of calving. But how many farms do we go on and we see 5% animal losses through different things? So let's try and aim for some good, I'd like to call them my clear vision KPIs of where I want to be in 5 years and work our way towards them. We're not going to get there overnight. This is a journey and it's a process.
Yeah, absolutely. One new KPI I've actually taken away that I saw you speak about at the ODPG conference is around the number of lactations, or the average number of lactations in our dairy herds. It's something that I've been starting to ask a lot of the farmers I'm working with. Do they even know what that is, or the average age of the herd? And a lot of them actually scratch their head and say, I have to go back and work that out. And I was like, well, okay, this is going to be for the next meeting. I want you to know that. And one of our key KPIs that we improve over time.
That's great. That's right. And we've also been indoctrinated to, when we have some spare cull options, to cull on the basis of age. But, there's nothing to say that those 11 and 12-year-olds in herds, if they've been fed well and they've got good skeletal development and they're still getting in calf every year at the right time, why are they not staying in the herd?
Yeah. Well, I like to think of that. That's actually quite a profitable cow because she's staying in the herd for a long time,
absolutely.
Still getting in cow, still making a lot of milk. Like, why would you get rid of that really good genetics just because of an age thing?
That's right.
Yeah. So before we get into it a bit deeper, we've already started to dig into the nitty gritty. For those of you who don't know who you are, can you take us back to the beginning? You've had quite a unique career so far, and it spans veterinary science, farming, ecology, business, and environmental policy. Can you take us back to the start and what really kicked it all off?
Yeah, I suppose I'm fortunate to have sort of been a fourth generation farming family, and my father was a veterinarian as well as originally a farmer, and from a large family. We've got 3 vets in the family. We've always been close to the rural, community. I trained as a vet thinking I was going to be doing horse vetting actually, but that didn't happen because of the way the taxes were going when I graduated. Actually, our whole class went overseas. I ended up being a flying vet in Australia for a while. I loved Australia, came back to New Zealand, worked in the dairy industry, but got quite, that was just when nitrogen had been really promoted, the higher stocking rates after the McMeekin study, etc. And I was just going, this isn't right. The only way, we were using more nitrogen, we're putting more cows per hectare. I was calving really skinny cows, undergrown heifers. We were inducing cows. I mean, the welfare issue was quite big then in the 90s. And I thought, well, we've got to change these systems. But the only way to change the systems is have the economic conversation. So that got me into sort of farm systems. About the same stage, late 90s, we went to Australia to go farming. So farmed there for 15 years and converted a few farmed through droughts and fires and disease incursions. So learned there that we had to have a sweet spot in our business and had lots of Kiwis over there. I was working for Nestle. So at one point we had a lot of young Kiwis that converted farms over there, but we all learned we had to flex and move. And we had to be in a position to flex and move and plan 6 to 8 months ahead. So with the Super El Nino coming up this summer, it's like we used to do that every year in Australia. We used to think like that, where's our water supply going to come from? Oh, my creek might dry out. My bore might dry out. Have I got a secondary water supply for my cattle, etc.? So the Australian experience has been great. Come back to New Zealand in 2010, saw all this heavy regulation starting to come in to protect our lakes. Thought I'd do a master's in freshwater ecology and policy to try and understand how we join the two together and could we have farms with a low footprint in sensitive areas. Didn't really enjoy it, but got involved as an expert witness in all the plan changes, especially in Canterbury, and actually now I think I've done it for 8 or 10 years, watched the process of. And I suppose my role as an expert witness there was trying to sort of say, look, we can farm differently and we can farm with a lower footprint and we can still be profitable and resilient. But to be fair, through the churn of policy and environment courts, etc., we still didn't come out with sound regulations. And I look back at what's happened in Canterbury and I look at what's happened in all the different regions I farm in the Rotorua Lakes here. The regulation hasn't really worked. We actually, if we concentrated on focusing on what the best farmers do that's different from the rest with the lowest footprint and the most resilience, almost like catchment groups are doing, that would have got us a lot further. So that, and also then worked with Pāmu for 5 years, and over that time also had my own business set up, focusing on how can we do things a lot better? And effectively, that's what Tipu Whenua is how do we regenerate the whenua or replenish the whenua theoretically with a whole of system approach?
Yeah, it's an incredible range of experiences you've had so far in your career. And that's why I was so excited to have you on, because you actually cover such a breadth of everything issue that is facing farmers in New Zealand. So was that experience in Australia, did that really open your eyes up, or was there another point in your career that really changed the way you were thinking about agriculture?
Oh, there's been a few turning points. I mean, one was in the 90s when I said I had to come back from Australia and work as a dairy vet. And, you know, I found it pretty hard inducing all those cows and having piles of bobbies in the middle of the tanker track. And it just felt so wrong. You know, we'd gone so wrong with the higher stocking rates and lots of nitrogen, and people were chasing production, but then that's what the economic drivers were, right? You know, more milk solids per hectare. That didn't feel right to me. And then, you know, we were young share milkers, couldn't quite get a grounding in New Zealand. So we went to Australia and learned there about how you have to flex and move and be thinking ahead, you know, 6 to 8 months ahead, because if you don't, you could just about lose everything in a drought. And we had 3 and 1 in 100-year droughts in 15 years. So it became a fairly regular thing. Fires within 3 k's of us. So you always knew to manage in the spring for fires. You got rid of the trash. You made sure that you always had really good water supplies. These are all things that we just need to be thinking about in New Zealand now. Yeah. So that was a turning point, I suppose, in Australia, learning that we had to have a sweet spot in our business, which is an optimum level, and then coming back to New Zealand and having this sort of 10 to 15 year period working through the churn of courts, environment courts, and then regulation, and then seeing where we are now, cutting red tape. I fully agree. Cut the red tape. Look at what the best farmers are doing. Learn from them and encourage the middle to move to the right. When I say the middle of the demographic curve, and move them towards the innovators and leaders. And we should all just be walking alongside our farmers, helping them get there.
I absolutely agree. So I think we'll pull on that regulation thread a little bit. So what do you think? I think farmers get quite a lot of pressure around environmental management. What do you think it is that farmers do really well when it comes to their own environmental management that people outside of agriculture just don't seem to get?
Yeah, I think a lot of farmers, they know how to read their land. They know the bits that are going to be leaky or where their animals are going to suffer some sort of misadventure. They know the areas that they should be retiring or restoring or whatever. The issue is that to date, they've really only had funding through councils, and the councils have used historically very expensive methodologies for retiring wetlands or steep slopes, etc., to the tune of $40,000 a hectare to plant a wetland with, you know, a bit of fencing around it, and a steep slope again with, you know, natives and big plastic bags, and you have to dig a big hole for each one, etc. I mean, I don't know if you know that we sort of pulled together a film called the T-Martyr Method, because I was faced with that as well, land use change here in the Rotorua Lakes, and I had to plant 10 hectares into natives, and it was, you know, at $40,000 a hectare, it's just going to cost me the price of my land. So we used the low-cost methodology here, which was using Manuka Kānaka pioneer species and then into planting forestry grade natives and then into planting canopy species, and did it for $4,000 a hectare. So there you go. When you're under pressure, you work out a far more cost effective way. I've got canopy closure on my restored areas for $4,000 a hectare, a tenth of what it would cost doing it through the councils. So I didn't really answer your question around regulation, but I did answer your question around farmers can work out good ways to do things that cost a whole lot less, but we need to support them to do that.
So how do you think we can support farmers to, you know, transform rather than just trying to regulate it like we've been doing for the last, I don't know how long, 10, 15, 20 years or more? Yeah,
I'm a big fan of catchment groups, and I think what we need to do is, all these catchments are different areas, right? You know, we've got the Pongakawa catchment here running down from the Rotorua Lakes to the coast. It's 34,000 hectares. So our attitude, and draining into one of the 5 worst estuaries in New Zealand. that needed something like a 70% reduction in nitrogen and phosphorus and E. coli, sort of along those lines. And you go, well, how are you going to do that? Well, what we did is took the attitude of how we almost did a farm plan for the catchment, the whole of catchment. So we treated the 34,000 hectares like a farm, and we identified all the steep slope areas that actually weren't as productive, what should happen to those in terms of land use change, looked at all the critical source areas, etc., and also looked at how can we slow the flow from the headwaters down to the estuary, and came up with a 34,000 hectare plan. Now, I think, and then we also found 15 lighthouse farmers who were ready to showcase what they wanted, what they were currently doing and what they could do and how they could halve their footprint and still stay profitable. So that was like a mix of sort of extension knowledge, thinking about a whole catchment as a farm, looking at how we could do it as cost effectively as possible, and just trying to extend that knowledge. So the spillover effect from what we could talk about the lighthouse farms, and used a lot of social media, films, gatherings, etc. But you still need funding to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you find it hard to find those kind of lighthouse farmers? Because I think that is actually the key to the success of catchment groups, is having the right farmers as like those pillars to show what is possible in that local context.
Yeah, that's right. And you've got to select them. You know, a catchment, there are different mitigations that are appropriate for the upper catchment, the mid catchment and the lower catchment. So we tried to have a spread of 15 lighthouse farmers across a 34,000 hectare catchment and select ones that were open to sharing their story and their data and were ready to change. Did we have a hard time finding them? No. To be fair, there were farmers that were already 30 years ahead, and they were doing the stuff that almost, if we could get the whole catchment doing it, we wouldn't have had a problem. So I found this in my master's as well, actually, in the Upper Waikato, is studying 25 farms over 4 years, is that the good guys don't actually know they're really good until you grab the data and you start talking about it. You know, it's like, I think these lighthouse farmers never thought they were lighthouse farmers until they did it, and we started talking about their data and we compared it with what the averages were, and then they realized, well, actually, I'm not doing too bad. I'm quite happy to talk about what I have been doing. It's actually been my philosophy for XYZ years. So, yeah, I think that model could work everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it as well that there's some farmers who are doing some really innovative, cool stuff, but they just think everyone else is, it's just the normal, everyone else is doing the same thing. I'm like, no, actually, this is quite cool and impressive work that you're doing. You should be happy to share this if you feel comfortable doing that. So I think that is a consistent thing or theme that I find, not just in New Zealand, but visiting farms around the world. There's people doing stuff who are quite humble about the way they're doing or farming their land and looking after it.
Absolutely. And I find that with animals too, because I'm obviously being a vet and caring about animal welfare, I do deep dives on their animal performance. And that's, for me, has been quite a big learning, in that the humble guys that are just doing stuff the right thing on time and thinking ahead and doing the basics right, they make some of the best farmers.
Absolutely. I think it comes back to that thing of just getting the foundations or the fundamentals right in farming gets you like so much of the way there, whether it's profitability, animal welfare, environmental effects. Like it's just getting those things right. And those farmers that generally really care about the animals and make all their decisions around that seem to have that flow-on effect onto every other part of their business.
I totally agree with you. It's like depressurize, get alignment in the whole system, have time to think about your strategy and still also be clear on where you're going with your clear vision. It's like all these philosophical things start coming right when you get the balance right.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So in terms of balance, when do you think regulation actually has a role versus whereas it can be quite counterproductive?
Well, we can talk about a lot of cases that counterproductive. You and I were just chatting about this, right? You know, we've got, well, you're in Canterbury, $10,000 to get a consent, and that's just to update the overseer, which again, I actually like overseer because it has a repository of data over time, but to be fair, it's only measuring 50% of the nitrogen coming off these farms. So that farmers are being encumbered with in these nutrient-constrained catchments is is money that they could be putting towards someone to help work out this whole of system strategy, and having a smart, I don't know if you like calling them consultants or an agricultural coach or something like that, to walk alongside them and just be that third party to either mix with their staff, but also help set their, what I call a One Health dashboard, which is a dashboard of the KPIs on those areas that we talked about earlier that show the KPIs that match with their vision, and you walk alongside them and take the farm system there over that 5-year period or whatever. That's a better way to spend the 10,000 if I had a choice. I've been disappointed about how the interpretation of things in regulation, and even things like catchment nitrogen levels or loads, we still don't fully understand that. We still don't understand the flow properly, and trying to nail things down to a 40% reduction in overseer produced nitrogen, it's not fixing the Rotorua Lake here. It's still there's not been much change. And look at Canterbury groundwater, not much change. Maybe we've got to stand back and say, actually, the way we've been trying to do this isn't working, guys. We need a new approach and spend the money differently.
Yep, I totally agree. And I guess that's like one of your key principles behind Tipu Whenua is around right land use and right place. Why do you find that this is such a key starting point for the work that you do?
Yeah, that's a good question, because again, I look at the animals and I go, are these animals presenting as optimum performance? And so often they're not. They're being forced to walk long distances on. It comes back to the wastage too, long distances on wet farms or long distances on hilly farms, or poor feed conversion efficiency. What's going on there? For me, that's my little burning platform red flag. Yours might be something different, but also, is that farm producing in the top 25% of where it should be and where it's capable of in terms of pasture harvest? That's another thing that I look at. If it's not, you go, well, hang on, are we better to constrain it to the better areas and retire or use those steep or more difficult to get to parts of the farm to another land use? So start thinking about land use change. I'm not a forester, I'm a vet. But what I do is I have a team, like a transdisciplinary team that I work with, and just say, okay, let's do an ETS assessment. If we planted some or retired some of those areas, is that going to give us more than what we're generating in terms of animal production on those steep slopes versus carbon farming? And those don't need to be costly processes. You can do some of that for $400, $500, or I think even someone like Carbon Crop will do it for free. But we just need to have transdisciplinary teams looking at the land asset and saying, is this the right land use in the right place? That's kind of how I've operated. I've looked at the farm like a veterinarian would look at an animal, and I've sort of said, where's the sore bits? And are they holding this farm back? Often they are. What's a better alternative use for them? And bring in the therapeutic team.
Yeah, it's kind of the underlying systems that you're looking at. So you've taken the animal approach of diagnosing, working through the root cause, and you do the same thing with the farm, and then you bring in the right experts to, I guess, help solve that root problem.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've worked with quite a number of farmers who have managed to, still achieve that strong financial performance while having that low environmental footprint. Is there something that you found that's common with those farmers that separates them from the rest?
Doing the basics right, knowing their numbers, being clear on where they're heading. Often I have found that farmers don't always, like we've said, the good farmers don't know that they're good sometimes, but they are very intuitive and clear on where they want to go. So it comes back to that clear vision, and they keep sticking at it. And then when you do analyze their business and you go, wow, this is amazing. Like, you're in the top 1% of dairying in the Waikato. How did you do that? And when you actually dive into it, they're just doing the basics right. They're making sure that their cows aren't heat stressed, that they're getting plenty of water in the summer, that they've got good feed utilisation. They're not bringing in costly, dumb, expensive supplements. They've got the stocking rate optimum for their productivity. So it comes back to that alignment and that balance, doing the basics right, knowing their numbers, and being clear on their clear vision and just sticking to it.
That's awesome. So I think it's quite easy for us to get just focus on, trying to solve one part of our system. Is it more of a whole systems approach that you're seeing that's the common thread there?
Definitely. You could talk about trying to solve one part of the problem, have I got enough pea fertilizer year in, year out? Or am I just looking at fertilizer as the solution, or just looking at veterinary intervention as the solution, or whatever? This is a whole systems thing. It sounds philosophical, and we are staying quite high level on some of this stuff, but that's how it works. It's a system. Yeah. It's probably 4 biological systems all meshed together, right? The land asset, which is biological, the humans, which are biological, the animals, which are biological, and the water cycle. Yeah.
And they're all intertwined. So I think if you're really trying to get to the root of an issue, you'll probably find that it's interacting with probably a couple of those other cycles that you just talked about as well.
Yeah.
So when we come back to kind of that resilience thread, I listened to a podcast recently, and they were talking about actually robustness is what we want to build.
Yeah.
It comes back to what you almost talking about in Australia, how you had the robustness for all those changing climates, droughts, fires, floods, etc. It's being robust across all of those. And I think that really applies to farming. It's not about resilience, it's about having a robust system that has that flexibility. Does that from your experience, need to have a diversified kind of income approach as well?
I'm always careful about diversified incomes if they stretch owners to too many things. Diversified passive incomes, I don't have a problem with. So if there's forestry in the right place, that's great. And that's a diversified income. Zero bobbies, that could be a diversified income, and it fits nicely with the dairy business. Beef, yes, that can fit really nicely with the dairy business as well. So as long as it doesn't add work, I'm a fan of it.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. People get excited when they see there's a really diversified business, but the amount of work that it takes for all those pieces to come together and do it well successfully, it's just astronomical from what I can see from the outside.
But if I think about Bay of Plenty, we'll have up to 5 enterprises on one farm, right? So we'll have kiwi fruit, maybe some avocados, but remember those are managed by the Seeker or the industry bodies, so that it's right land use, right place. Then we'll have some forestry, then we'll have some beef or heifer grazing, and then we'll have a dairy farm somewhere in the middle of this contiguous land block. So what we were doing with our catchment approach was doing a pan-sector farm plan, and then we did a pan-sector catchment environmental plan, which was like a farm plan across the whole catchment. So again, orchards and horticulture can be great if they don't add work for the farmer, and we want to keep the focus on the animals, or the animals and the land asset.
Yeah. So when you're taking that whole catchment approach, how do you, balance economic performance versus environmental or ecological outcomes when you're working at that catchment scale? Because obviously there's such a mosaic of farms that are operating under that. How do you approach that? Because it's quite a big beast to deal with.
Gosh, that's a really complex question, because what cost do you put on poor land use where you're getting, like in Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, and we've had it here in the Bay of Plenty, where you've got the wrong land use in the wrong place and you get floods and landslides. No one puts an economic value on the wrong land use in the wrong place, do they?
No. Do you think that's something we should change?
Well, for sure. Look at what the insurance companies are saying now. I can't remember the exact numbers, but the cost of not acting, and I think the Climate Change Commission is talking about this as well, the cost of not acting and not planning at a catchment level to prevent floods and landslides is, I can't remember the numbers, but maybe that might be a good little interview for you to look at those things and how we remediate it, because remediating it is going to be slowing the flow from the top of the catchment to the middle of catchment to protect downstream communities from harm.
I think that's where we're going to have to go in future. And I've just been to the UK, and they're looking at these catchment approaches around how do they basically utilise the farmland to stop flooding from hitting the train tracks or the water companies down low. And is it better to spend 300 million supporting the farmers to do the right thing with the right piece of land rather than paying the insurance companies in future?
Totally.
Yeah. And I think the insurance companies would probably be rather supportive of that. If you just look at what happened with Cyclone Gabrielle, the amount of costs that has gone there, I think within the first 2 years was already more than the Christchurch earthquake, and they're still cleaning it up now.
Yeah, but that's right. They're still cleaning it up now, but they still haven't got a plan.
No. And what is the plan? Because there was a cyclone, is my understanding, 60 or 70 years ago that did very similar to some of those planes, and they built the same things there again.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've got some really challenging and big problems to solve in this country. And right at the moment, it feels like we're stalled because we're just having this new RMA come out, right?
Yeah.
But no one is clear. What we're lacking is a clear vision for Aotearoa.
I wholeheartedly agree.
And what we're lacking is a clear vision at the catchment level. Like, farmers are kind of sitting on their hands going, what do we do now? We want to do the right thing. We know what we should be doing, but there's no coordination. Regional councils, are they still going to be around? We don't even know.
Yeah, and it's like if you want to invest in something that might be good for the farm and the catchment, it's when things are uncertain, you're probably going to hold off doing that. Like a lot of people will do. Not most people are going to just bore ahead and just do it anyway. But I think that is one of our biggest issues as a country, is that we don't have a shared vision of what we're working towards. And I guess that kind of leads into my next question for you, is that you've mentioned it a couple of times around having a North Star, and that's kind of the work that you start with farmers. What does that actually mean, and why is it so important when the world around farming is just kind of constantly changing?
North Star is the same as clear vision. And because farming it takes time to change systems, we all know that, 5 years often. That's why the clear vision is so important. The KPIs around what that clear vision looks like is really important. And just keep working at the things you know you can change that are in your control. And that seems to be the secret. Like, it's consistency, it's perseverance, it's a view on where you're going, and knowing that it takes a while to get there, but forming that clear vision, that takes a bit of strategic thinking, and often with a third party, about what's right for you, for your family, for your land. What are your aspirations? Do you want it to stay as an intergenerational asset? If so, ask the young ones what it is that they want. What will they come home to? And I think technology is giving us some hope there, because that's bringing young people home. It excites them. It's doing things differently with far greater precision than what's been done before. So North Star, be clear on where you're going, make a plan, measure it every year about your progress towards it, and use those well-chosen KPIs that are easily procurable. So
the important thing here is, I guess, with the KPIs, is that they actually need to align with your North Star as well. They can't just be kind of
correct,
picked out of the sky. And
yes. What utopia looks like in that vision, and set those KPIs around it. You know, you might say, I definitely don't want to lose any more than 1% of my cows in a year. And yes, I would like to be keeping, a third of my herd for 8 lactations or 7 lactations. Like, set some KPIs that are measurable every year and easy to get. And yes, I want my pasture harvest to come up from what's historically been 7.5 or 10.5 to 14.5. And I know I can do that with diverse species and the right sort of soil health, etc. It's just a matter of setting achievable KPIs around that vision and working towards them.
Absolutely. It's almost, what do they call it? The SMART goals that you need to, that you're taking that approach and breaking it down. So you've got that utopia vision, but how do we work backwards and chunk it down to what we're doing today to just make it, you eat the elephant one bite at a time and you get there. Right. Yeah. The recipe for success, though, is it isn't that exciting. I think it's doing the fundamentals right. It's discipline, it's consistency, it's not super shiny and get there quick, but it compounds over time. Is that your experience with the farmers that you've been working with?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not super shiny, sorry, but it's sticking at it.
Yeah. And I guess like you say, there is some exciting technology that is bringing the children home, or ways to improve the system currently.
Well, they're the shiny bits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in the Bay of Plenty, I think we've got over 30% on the coastal Bay of Plenty that have adopted halter, but I'm not sure that they're all getting economic benefits from it. But, it's been something that's, it's the most rapid tech uptake I've seen in my lifetime. We understood when we were at Massey that it took 30 years to adopt change, but here it's been like in 3 years, 30% of farmers have made a change. So it's been pretty interesting. The key is that we make sure we get the economic benefits of spending the money in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Waikato's even closer to like 50% of dairy farms or something have uptaken it.
Yes.
I think with technology, if you're a good farmer, you'll figure out how to utilize it well, or you'll remove it from the system. But if you're, a bit of a lazy farmer or someone who likes a shortcut, you'll just use it to do that, and you'll see a eventual degradation of your whole system off the back of it.
Yeah.
And technology can do really great things, but it can also have the complete flip side.
That's right.
Especially if you don't do the fundamentals well.
Yeah, and I'm finding it's being used for different outcomes. I mean, only 2 days ago I was standing with a couple of farmers and they're both off their farms, but they're using it so that it's almost like to keep an eye on their managers in a remote situation. So it's not just for managing cows, it's for managing people as well.
I think that might be one of the biggest benefits that I've found from some of my farmers that utilise it is quality control, I think, with staff, not just managers, but other breaks, getting the cows being fed well enough. It kind of comes back to that. Are the cows happy and healthy and full? And if not, they can call up the staff and ask what's happening.
Yeah.
So we've talked quite a lot about, I guess, designing our systems, right land type, North Star. And this probably all sounds quite, great to a farmer, but they've got a mortgage, they've got staff, they've got people to manage, a business to run. Like, where do they start? Because it can be quite overwhelming.
They start with understanding where their baseline is. And I know that sounds really basic, but are they looking at all those areas of their baseline? And, they all fill in their dairy diary and send it to Fonterra, but quite a lot of that's not a measure of really how their system is performing as to where it could be performing. So understand where your baseline is and how it compares with farms of similar land capability. You can't compare yourself with hugely different farms, right? And is it where you want it to be? Could you be more profitable? Those are questions that maybe you want to get a consultant or a farm coach in to do those numbers and say, is this the most suitable business for my land and my aspirations? I think that's the key places to start. You could do dairy-based, but it takes about a year to get that data back. For me, that's too slow in a lot of cases. You want to do it right at the end of one season and get yourself a good consultant or analyst to do that for you. And then look at a range of scenarios. Am I better off with 20% fewer cows and bringing in less feed that I was bringing in to feed that parasitic herd that I didn't realize I was actually trying to manage, especially this year with feed, fuel, freight, all those costs are going to go up, aren't they? So we want to have a resilient system that can flex and move. Get on to having that analysis done sooner than later, I'd be saying.
Oh, absolutely. The numbers don't lie once you got the baseline, and then you can actually really understand where you're at. I do like that term when it comes to dairy, the parasitic cows, and I think I know where that's come from, our friend Barry.
Yeah.
But it's a really good concept to talk to people, and I have found it regularly that I think there's quite a number of dairy businesses that would be more profitable if they had less cows.
Yeah, it's been interesting, isn't it, Conan? Because that's what my masters showed, that the most profitable businesses long-term were the ones that weren't overstocked. But I don't think the industry liked that. Because there's been this sense that we can reduce cows by 10 or 15 or 20%, but we're not going to get any more per cow. But we do. We can. And if you look back at 10 years ago, we're probably only getting 75% of body weight as milk solids. Bring in palm kernel. That was adopted really fast, wasn't it? And people actually learned that they could get 90% or even 100% of body weight by bringing in feeds. So in quite a short period, we realised that cows could be doing, a 470 kilo cow could be doing 470 kilos of milk solids. But the issue is that we've kept the same stocking rates. Let's try doing that from as much homegrown feed as possible. And that's where we might find that 15 to 20% fewer cows is better. We reduce all those bought-in feeds. But it's like been these staged learning things, right?
Yeah.
Discoveries of what cows can actually do.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting one because you can see it and then you can show it to a farmer, but they'll still need to believe it can happen on their specific context. And I guess it comes back, if you get the fundamentals right, then you should be able to do that. And then I also see farms that are producing like massive amounts per cow, but how much of that is actually them just paying for production and it's not making them any more money and potentially eroding that profitability. I don't think those equations get done either.
No, that's right. And so whose role is it to do these things? Is it that of the industry? Is it farmers sort of saying, is this big shift happening? I like to think it probably is in New Zealand that we're cutting the red tape. Yay. We're getting rid of regulation that actually hasn't delivered stuff anyway at catchment level. We're starting to look at things differently, and maybe that money is re-channeled to farmers to actually understand some of these really basic things and have people walk alongside them to help them get there, but not only at a farm level, but at a catchment level as well. So community thinking.
Yeah, I think that's the important connection there, is like, it's not just the farm, it's like, how do you connect to the wider catchment and community? Because then when those pieces all come together, it's amazing what can happen in that shift.
Yeah. And it's like, I think we need to have some more conversations around just what you said, connecting the farm to the community, and how do we do that, and how do we get the community really engaged? Because it is hard to engage farmers, they're busy people. But what are exciting and fun things to get them into town to come and say, look, how can our future look? So we're just planning something in Te Puke quite soon, actually. We want to have the young people that are coming back onto the farms in their 20s to put up a proposal of how they want the Coastal Bay of Plenty to look in 2030 and 2036 and what it means for their farm. And then that'll be like a judge and a jury, or a panel and a jury. The jury will be the 60-plus-year-old parents and farmers going, do we agree with this or not? Or is that possible? And it's like you bring these two visionary worlds together, right? We have to do fun things to explore these things and work out and solve our problems at a community level.
And that making it fun will make more engagement, and people will actually start getting really creative as well. So I think that's an awesome approach to doing it.
Yeah.
So if I'm a farmer and I'm looking at my business today, what's one bit of advice you'd give them around trying to build a bit more robustness into their system?
Well, for a start, just go through, are you prepared for this summer? This summer, I think we look at what's happening in the Northern Hemisphere. We know it's coming towards us. Build a bit more robustness in. Just think about where your burning platforms are. What are your highest risks? And yes, there might be some risks around effluent management and compliance, blah, blah. But that's one thing to look at. The other one is, what are the most important things to keep your animals safe, your people safe, and your farm safe in the face of escalating feed prices, water shortages, fires, extreme heat? Where are your cows going to get shade and shelter from? Things like that. So probably for a start right now is start thinking about those things that we know are coming in the next 5 or 6 months and could last quite well through to May or June next year. Been there, done that.
It feels like we haven't had a really good drought in Canterbury for a long time. Not like the ones I had when I was growing up. I definitely remember those even as a young fella.
So hang on, how do irrigated farms look when there's no water, when the river runs dry? What do you do?
Well, they go brown very quickly. You can see this.
How do you maintain the cows?
Well, that's the thing. They start buying in feed, dry them off, send them off somewhere else. I mean, I come from a dryland sheep and beef background, so I've got a different approach to that sort of things. But it's amazing just the difference in those farms, grazing management, how much it makes to resilience and putting feed in front early in the season. Even on an irrigated farm, those corners that don't get as much water, they just hold on a bit longer or a couple of weeks longer, or don't go to seed head as fast. And I'd be looking over the fence at those people asking what they're doing. Yeah, this will be a tester, because if the water levels in the river are down and a lot of people are running on surface water rather than groundwater now, how are they going to be impacted? And then what's that going to do to feed costs, freight cost, food cost? So it could be a double whammy.
I think it definitely could be, and planning for that now is what I'd be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's better to plan and not need all those reserves than be competing with everyone else to buy more feed. And looking at what they're saying, it's not going to be just one region that's going to be experiencing it either. So
that's right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds a bit depressing finishing on that note, but it's about managing risks. You know, it's like one of the farms I've worked with for many years says it's not the good years that make you, it's the bad years that break you.
I think that's very apt in farming. Interesting, what you're seeing, I'm seeing on social media right now, is that there's almost like a bit of fatigue around the talk around the El Nino. And I'm like, don't get lulled into that. That's not going to set you up and you'll just regret it.
Correct.
Yeah. So I like to finish all my podcasts with one quick fire question for all my guests, which is, what's one belief or principle that keeps you grounded no matter what season you're in?
Well, keeps me grounded or keeps me positive is working with these great farmers that are already 30 years ahead and understanding their stories and taking it out wider.
Absolutely. I love that too. It's definitely inspires you and fills you with energy to go out and
it does.
help others. So where can those listeners want to connect or learn more about what you do, Alison?
Just through my website, really. So if that can be on here somehow. And
I'll put it in the description for them.
That's easy. Yeah.
Yep.
Really happy to chat. No, no obligation or whatever. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on today. It's been a great chat, something that I've wanted to talk about with you for a long time. And I'm sure we could have gone down many a rabbit hole quite easily. So we might have to have you back at some stage to go down another one.
Thanks, Conan. And I hope the South Island fares well in the next 6 to 12 months. So, yeah, let's keep in touch.
Yeah, so do I. Otherwise, it's going to make my job very hard. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.